Big spotlight for the day. The perceived rise in ethnic tensions and BJP's loose-canon members could sully India's global image, if not reined in. Moody Analytics, an arm of ratings agency Moody's, today warned that the belligerent provocation of various Indian minorities has raised ethnic tensions in the country. The agency said that such incidents could divert Parliament's attention away from more meaningful economic policy-related issues. The report, of course, comes in the backdrop of noted authors and filmmakers returning awards in protest owing to the alleged vicious attack on the very idea of a pluralistic and tolerant India. On that subject now, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by noted author of novels Immortals of Meluha, Amish Tripathi, on the show. Good to have you on The Big Picture, Amish. In the recent past, we have seen there's been like many authors and directors returning their awards, and even scientists have now weighed in as far as this debate is concerned. Where do you stand as far as this raging and vexing issue is concerned?
First of all, I'm not really raging. I think the key point to note, and speaking seriously, all artists, all the awards that they receive, the prestige, the honor, the respect, I think it must be understood that it's not given to them by the government of the day or by any politicians. It is given to them by Indian society. So when they return awards, they are in effect not really passing a judgment on the government. They are passing a judgment on all 1.25 billion Indians. And if they're doing so, which is a pretty serious judgment, that a vast majority of Indians have become communal, then it must be backed up by data. Does the data show that a vast majority of Indians have become communal and that religious violence has taken off to such a massive extent? Frankly, if you look at the data, this data is available through police records. Frankly, the data does not show that there is massive religious violence in India. The data, however, does show that there is massive gender violence in India. Women suffer a great deal in India. But I don't think the data shows that there is religious violence in India.
Point taken, Amish, but while you may be right that there are far graver issues to deal with, and also how the data, as you're mentioning, does not sort of reflect the fears that the authors have raised, still the larger point that they are trying to make is that perhaps that the government is not doing enough to rein in the miscreants who are constantly making unnecessarily controversial points.
No, there are incidents that have happened, heinous incidents. And I'm not sure I would demand just criticism by the government. I think our entire criminal justice system needs to be toned up dramatically. All the criminals who were responsible for these incidents, they need to be caught, they need to be punished with the full force of the law. And actually this brings me to a bigger reform that is crucial for India, which is the reform of our criminal justice system. It's not just a few religious extremists who escape because of our paralyzed and overburdened criminal justice system. There are rapists, there are murderers, there are all kinds of criminals who actually get away scot-free because our criminal justice system is heavily clogged. So that is a huge area of reform that I think all political parties need to work on. On that I would agree, yes.
Well, glad, Amish, you're bringing in a different element to this discussion. But we've seen so far how this debate has unfolded on the social media. In fact, many who are criticizing the authors for their stand on this issue say that, after all, India has a federal polity, and what happens in states should not be attributed to the central government, because law and order is not a central subject, it's a state subject.
That in fact goes deeper into the problem that I raised of the criminal justice system. You're right, law and order is actually a state subject in India. It's not a central subject. And regrettably, no state government, across all political parties, no state government has implemented police reforms. No state government, at least I'm not aware, across all political parties, has worked with the courts to figure out how can we get our court system moving. But you're right that this is a state subject. It's not a central subject. That's the structure of our constitution. Law and order is a state government subject.
Right, right. You know, Amish, since Nayanthara Sehgal returned her award, we have seen a chain reaction. Do you think there's also perhaps an element of peer pressure involved which nobody is talking about?
Look, I don't know. It would be wrong of me to suppose on what's going on in the minds of these writers. They are my seniors. They have written far more than I have, for many more years than I have. I don't know what's going on in their minds, but I would advise that on serious subjects like this, I think all of us who are debating in the public space, we need to take a calm breath. We need to step back and approach this issue calmly with rational analysis rather than emotions where we may just be jumping to conclusions without adequately analyzing what's going on.
You know, Amish, not just emotions, because these authors have also accused that many, in fact, are also accusing that their author stance stems more from an ideological, divergence with respect to the central government. I mean, do you agree with that?
You're partially right in what you're saying, and I do want to say that at least as far as the Indian citizenry, the Indian public is concerned, I think there certainly is space among all Indians to accept different points of view. Even subjects that are really close to Indian hearts, like compared to many other countries, that even stuff which is close to our hearts, like religious scriptures, we are willing to accept different points of view. We are a culture which appreciates different truths. Ekam sata vipra bhahuta vadanti. Truth is one, but the wise men speak it as many. It's core to the Indian way of life. However, there is a serious legal problem on freedom of expression in India. The original constitution was actually deeply liberal in its interpretation of freedom of expression, Article 19. The first amendment of 1951, which was brought in by the then Nehru government, actually put in restrictions on freedom of expression and right to property and various other rights. So if you ask me, I'd written an article on this, some time back, where I'd said those of us who are freedom of expression lovers, who are liberals, we need to campaign for the First Amendment to be repealed. It was applied all the way back in 1951, and our freedom of expression has legally at least been curtailed since 1951. That needs to be repealed. The First Amendment needs to be repealed.
You know, Amish, you repeatedly say that they should have had calmer minds and looked at the data more closely, but people also expect authors to choose their words wisely and very carefully. In fact, one of the authors accused the Prime Minister of silence amidst this reign of terror. But as any well-read person would know, that the term reign of terror was in fact used after the French Revolution, when over 40,000 people were executed. Clearly, we cannot do without, we can do without using such alarmist terms.
So I'm saying once again, you're right, and you're referring to Robespierre's reign of terror in post the French Revolution. You're right. There may be a certain level of exaggeration, and I think the best way for people to get a sense of perspective is to look at numbers rather than build on words more and more. That would be some advice that I would certainly prefer. I admit I'm younger than many of these writers. They're far more senior than I am, far more senior to me, but I would suggest a bit of calmness is required. Perhaps we need to look at data a little more rationally and calmly.
Thanks so very much, Amish. We've got to leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us on The Big Picture, and thanks for bringing in a different element to this rather vexing and a complex subject.